And welcome everybody to our Startup Women's Industry Roundtable for Women in CPG or Consumer Packaged Goods. I am Miriam Wedge. I'm the program lead for Startup Women in Startup Global here at Startup Canada. So to begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that the land on which I am on today is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, and Wabanaki nations. As we are a national organization, I would also like to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples, and I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are residing on today. So Startup Canada is a national nonprofit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business here in Canada. Startup Women is an annual program offering support to early stage
The Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Across Canada through topic-focused webinars, industry roundtables like today's, and meetings with startup women leaders. So these monthly industry roundtables provide attendees with a deeper understanding of trends and best practices in their sector, and will leave with actionable takeaways and resources that they can implement into their business. So we have a short message from one of our co-presenting partners, the Scotiabank's Women Initiative. And
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything, thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Thank you so much, Altana. So I would also like to thank our other co-presenting partners, UPS, and our...
The Scotiabank...
There we go, perfect. Our other co-presenting partner is UPS, and then our ecosystem partners are MasterCard, Leoc, and Constant Contact. We'll add a list of our partners into the chat shortly. So today's session is for women in CPG. We're very excited to dive into the discussion. Our goal today is to equip you with advice and practical knowledge from some later stage entrepreneurs that we'll have as speakers that are working within the CPG space. And also given the current uncertainty around the potential US and Canada tariffs, we also want to create some space for any questions that you may have today around preparing for the potential tariffs. And we'll also share a link in the chat shortly for our tariffs toolkit that we've set up at Startup Canada. So as you can see, we've put the schedule for today's session on the screen here. So in a moment, I'll start off with some attendee introductions. So this is for anybody who's in the room and on camera. If your camera's on, I'll assume that you're comfortable to be called upon for an intro, and I'll call on your name to get started. We have about 15 minutes for this. And then afterwards, we're going to hear some expert talks from our 3 guest speakers today. And then after that, they'll be doing around 50 minutes of Q&A with the speakers as well. And then the last part of today's session will be some networking breakout rooms where everyone will get the chance to connect with about 3 or 4 fellow attendees. Speakers will also be placed into some of these rooms. And we have 35 minutes carved out in total for these, but we'll do about 3 or 4 rounds of like 8 to 10 minutes each, depending on how that takes us later in the session. All right, so I'll get started with some attendee introductions. Like I said, if your camera's on, I'll assume that you're comfortable introducing yourself on camera. If you prefer to introduce yourself in the chat, go for it as well, and feel free to share your LinkedIn profiles and things like that to keep connected afterwards. So you can kind of just tell us your name, where you're joining from, a little bit about your business, and what you're looking forward to learning from today's call. First up on my screen, I see Kim.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I am a marketer. I've worked in CPG for a number of years, and I'm concerned about the tariff threats, to be quite honest, as most of you are as well. And along the way, actually, I have productized my knowledge. I've got unique experience in understanding the customer, and I've productized that knowledge into do-it-yourself kits to be able to help entrepreneurs identify opportunities and to pivot. So my website is www.medinsky, I'll put that in the chat.com. And my goal here is to learn and to hear what's going on with all of you, and also to be able to see how I can help you as well. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Next up on my screen, I see, I'm not sure if that's your name, but Atelier Dali Louisia.
Hi, my name is Dali Louisia. So I'm a luxury handcrafted fashion designer. I had to take a long break for my two businesses for the past few years, and I'm currently taking care of preparing my relaunch. And so this is what I'm doing at the moment, and I'm rebuilding community and getting back into the networking process or system. And in terms of the presentation today, obviously, yes, about the tariff. I'm very curious and I want to be more educated and be more prepared, because one of the surveys that I'm offering is blog as well. And when I see my, when I see on a monthly who is mostly looking at my business is the US, United States. So for me to have to keep a relationship with the US, but also be aware of Canadian and prioritizing and supporting Canada during that period. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I actually just thought too, it's in the tariff toolkit that I shared a few comments ago, but we also have a full roundtable session that we hosted through our Startup Global channel. So I'll make sure to add a link to that recording as well for everybody. All right, I see next on my screen, Karina Kai. I think you, oh, here we go.
Hi, my name is Karina, and I come from Vancouver. I'm an independent consultant, working in the natural health product, and I'm doing some formulation.
I'm sorry to
work.
interrupt, but I can't hear anything.
Oh,
I have my
okay.
speaker at high, and I'm having trouble making out any words.
You want to maybe try leaving the room and then coming back on? Sometimes it's just Zoom's quality. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Karina.
Oh yeah, sure. So for the formulation and for the Canada and the US market, the natural products, the regulatory stuff, everything like that. Thank you. Nice to meet you, everyone here.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you so much. And I just added that YouTube link for the Terrace Roundtable that we hosted recently. Next up, I see Ali Crandall.
Hi there. Thanks so much for organizing all of this. I am a new founder of a luxury skincare company called Stella Apothecary. And I've been in the tech industry for about 10 years and I got laid off 2 weeks ago. So I was kind of building Stella up on the side of my desk in the evenings and on weekends, basically working full time on both businesses. I saw the layoffs coming, so I wanted to prepare myself, and now I'm just going full in. So I used to work for a wholesale marketplace, so I have a lot of CPG intel or experience. I've been to lots of the trade shows, and I'm trying to think of the names. Yeah, HR, sorry, not HR. I just was in HR, so my brain is fully into the HR space still, but I'm getting away from that. And I'm here basically because I want to get back in that CPG space, and I want to kind of build my network in that space again. I haven't really launched beyond my local community, but I'm excited to take that step in the next few months.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry to hear about the layoffs. I know it's always a tough situation, but I've heard so many inspiring stories of other entrepreneurs that actually launched their careers. So there we go. It's
it's the push I needed. So it's perfect.
Awesome. That's great. Awesome. Next up, I think it's Christina Louie. Oh, Maybe this might help.
Okay, there
we
we go. Sorry.
All good.
Hi, everyone. My name's Christina Louie. I am the founder of Aurelia Beauty. Think Array of Sunshine Aurelia, because we're the first vitamin D infused lip care line in Canada. It was formulated locally here. I live in Vancouver, Canada. Currently, I wholesale to Whole Foods Market, the Detox Market. We're part of the, I was able to get onto a Launchpad program over at the Detox Market. So also have some distribution in the US and a lot of local salons and boutiques here in Vancouver as well. The reason and kind of what I'm looking for from this session, as well as being part of this mailing list, is really kind of learning up the CPG business. I come from, like Ali, outside of the CPG industry. I was in finance for a while, in asset management. Before that, I was in consulting. And so really just kind of learning as I do. And, just it is a really grinding business in CPG, I find, as I am in these kind of big box places like Whole Foods Market. I would love to kind of get input from other brands and other founders about, just anything from kind of pricing and deals, because we are, obviously asked to participate in certain promos in CPG, and just kind of to get that till and that velocity in store and stuff like that. But really kind of making those the pricing as well as your COGS to work well and be sustainable business going forward, and at some point being revenue positive. It's a bit of a trick. So I would love, I think the network here and what you Startup Canada has started here is wonderful. And so I'm here to contribute as well as to be a part of this networking. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
And
much.
I'll show you. Here, this is my product. We have 4 SKUs. So we have a clear balm and 3 different colors. And we're planning on another SKU, another product to be introduced soon.
That's so exciting. Cool. And yeah, some of those questions that you were mentioning around like pricing and like for setting up those things, we do have some questions prepared for that, but also that's something I'll get into a little bit later, but we definitely encourage everybody to ask speakers questions during the Q&A that's upcoming. So we can definitely address those questions.
Thank you. And I'll share my contact information just so that there's, feel free to contact me for networking reasons and whatnot. Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, I see Tana.
Hi, everyone. I am the founder of a Caribbean CPG line of Caribbean products called Creole. I recently just launched. I have 2 products. They are mixture of Caribbean foods, like a dal, and one is like a dal and rice. So I've recently just launched. I'm very new to it. So I am just want to be here and learn from people's experiences and what they have gone through. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I love dal so much. So if you have a link, definitely send it in the chat. I would
So I
love
do have a link, so I will put it in most definitely. I've done
Awesome.
my packaging, which is try to keep it like Caribbean themed. I did not bring it on my phone. I don't know if you can see it.
Awesome. Nice. That looks
Oh,
great.
nice.
Oh, the blur. Yeah. No, I saw it a little bit. That's all good.
That's so perfect. I will put it up so everyone can have a look at it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think I have time for maybe 1 or 2 more intros. I'll go to Caroline next.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm, I guess, CPG slightly adjacent. I supply regulatory food labeling services. So CPG for food. So I take care of the ingredients, the allergens, the nutrition facts tables, the claims, where everything needs to be, how big it needs to be, and what can't be on there, and all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, I'm always happy to chat. If anybody has any questions, my link's in the chat. Just feel free to reach out. I love hearing about new products and what everybody's doing anyways. So Kiss me on my toes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline. And then the last person I see on my screen is Marianne Paul. How's it going, Marianne?
Good. How's it going with everybody this morning?
Good. I think you joined a little bit late, but we're just doing some intros if you'd like to introduce yourself to the room.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize for being late, but I'm glad I'm here. So my name is Marianne Paul, and my company is called Camelot Consulting. And what we do is we offer blanket exercises that tell the story of Canada through the Indigenous people. And we present those to large organizations or small, kind of everybody in there. And then we take a portion of those fees and we put it towards offering free Indigenous parenting classes. So that in Manitoba and Saskatchewan alone, there's over 44,000 children in the foster system. 90% of them are Indigenous. We want to lower those numbers. We want to get the families back together. And then the last thing is that I speak. I'm a keynote speaker about intergenerational trauma, and I tell my story. So that's about me.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I think that's all I see in terms of people that are in camera for intros. So any other intros you can do in the chat. I see a lot of LinkedIn's already, which is awesome. So definitely keep those coming if you haven't done so already. We are going to head into our expert talks next. I'm very honored to introduce today's guest speakers, who are Angie Tran, the co-founder of Kind Laundry. We have Susie York, who is the founder and CEO of the Little Cacao Company, as well as the founder of Love Good Fats. And we have Kat Jeske, who is the co-founder of Elan. So I'll get started with some of our expert talks, and we'll get started with Angie, if that's okay.
Hello, my name is Angie, and I'm the co-founder of Kind Laundry. At Kind Laundry, we're on a mission to make laundry care better for the planet, pets, and people. Our products here, this is our hero product. So I think I'm lagging, but I'm sorry if you guys can't see it. Are high performance, they're sustainable, and designed to turn laundry into ritual self-care. So we started 4 years ago, primarily on D2C, with the US making up more than 95% of our market. And we're finally starting to expand across retail Canada, which we're trying to figure out right now. So I'm going to be transparent, honest. We're still in the learning process because a lot has changed in the last few years since launch in the world. But I think it's important to adapt, adjust, and pivot as we go so we can share about our experience. So yeah, I'm very excited here to share our experience, learn from each other, and be as valuable as much as possible to you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Angie. Also, sorry, my cat has decided to join us today. I'll pass it over next to Susie to share her story.
Okay, perfect. Susie York. So I have 20 years in packaged goods, working at 5 multinationals. And then at age 50, I discovered we had all been misled about fats and sugar. So I decided to launch a brand to tell the world that we were misled, because I'm a marketer and there was all these books coming out on keto and whatnot. So I figured I'm not going to write a book on that. There's lots of doctors, and I'll just launch a brand. It was my first startup at age 50. I took my kids' university money that was set aside, and I took a big chance. The brand went really, really well and went $8 million in year 1, and then $47 million in year 2, and then COVID hit. So we were a portable bar. So it went down to about 30 or 32. And then I stepped out of the CEO role. So that's a whole conversation on its own. It was just after COVID, and it was kind of the norm to kind of switch out, founders a little bit too soon. So there's a lot of rockiness that happened after that, but I was on the board until the restructure, and now one of my my former general managers and investor owns the brand. So you can find Love Good Fats, and it's back to growing and profitable. So that's my legacy in terms of the shelves in Canada. I'm launching I went back to my CMO job, but I really have the entrepreneur bite. So it was hard to resist. I've been to South America 9 times now. I'm in love with pure, real chocolate, real cacao, not processed with alkali. So I'm launching my second brand called The Little Cacao Company, and it's all about bringing authentic, real cacao-based products. I'm launching just small in 3 categories: a pure cacao hot chocolate with protein, so 18 grams of protein, vitamins, multivitamins. So instead of gummies, they're in pure chocolate, and also some mini bites. So instead of the Quest mini bites, which has bad ingredients, all of my products have good ingredients. So I'm going at it again. I do fractional CMO stuff to pay my bills. Also, in the last 12 years, I have a phenomenal client right now. You probably know them, 3 farmers. And so that's a delight. I started Founders Helping Founders nearly 3 years ago. So I see a bunch of our founders here on the call. And that's really just, we're really cool. Like I've never had this opportunity with Startup Canada, but we're just like a bunch of founders that share mostly on what's up and on meetings. We have some events coming up. So the community is really, really key. It's very, very lonely to be a founder. It's lonely to be a CEO. It's hard. There's always different phases. So I've been through kind of the grind and back a few times. Nothing fades me. So, these type of groups are really, really key. So I want to give back a little bit today, and I'm looking forward to all the Q&As.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Susie. I shared a link to the LinkedIn page or the LinkedIn group for Founders Helping Founders, but you have other links to share. Definitely let us know. Awesome. And then last but not least, I'll pass it over to Kat next for her story.
Hi, everyone. I love hearing about all these different businesses. I'm very happy to be here, and you're all making me hungry because there's so many food businesses. So it's so nice to meet you all. I am the co-founder of Lawn. We're a Toronto-based home fragrance company. So we create candles, room mists, essential oils designed to scent your journey and elevate your space. Just a bit of a background on myself and my co-founder. Both of us were chemical engineers at Queen's. We went to the same high school. We are a couple years apart. And then I went off to study perfumery in France, and she went off to work for L'Oreal in manufacturing. We both gained a lot of experience in the beauty industry. And back in 2017, we connected and just noticed that a lot of the candle brands on the market were very minimal, black and white packaging, single scent notes. They were kind of boring, not gonna lie. So we decided to create a really colorful, elevated brand of candles. These are just some of our best sellers. If you haven't seen us already, we are sold at Holt Renfrew, Well.ca, the Detox Market, to name a few. And we're in, sorry? Or is that just, oh. We are sold in over 250 retailers across North America. We created a really clean candle using coconut wax, cotton core wicks, reusable glass vessels sourced from a food manufacturer that can be used as a wine glass or water glass once you're done with your candle, and recyclable ingredients. And we're just very passionate about creating layered, sophisticated scents that really can fill a room, but they're not overpowering. They don't have that headache-inducing scent. They're really elevated with our backgrounds. We just wanted to create the perfect product. So we think we nailed it. We've been around, we launched in 2018. So we've been around for a while now, which is pretty crazy, but it's really nice to connect with you all. And I am excited to tell you more about our story and our experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. Actually, I haven't purchased a lawn candle in a while, but I used to live in Toronto. There's a little shop by my place that used to carry them. So I kind of miss that now that I'm thinking about it. But thank you all so much for sharing your stories. We're now going to head into the panel discussion. So we definitely encourage everybody to stay on camera. You can use the raise hand function if you have any questions for these speakers. I think that's just in the React menu option at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. And yeah, so you can also use the chat function and the Q&A function if you have any questions for the speakers as well. I'll now pass it over to today's moderator, who is Isabel Nolan, the Director of Programs at Startup Canada. Over to you, Isabel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miriam. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. I'm seeing some familiar names in the room as well, which is always wonderful to see people coming back to our programming year over year. And hello to anyone who maybe this is your first roundtable, your first Startup Canada session. I'm very excited and honored that you're sharing your morning or your afternoon with us. We, as Miriam mentioned, we have quite a few questions drafted out for our speakers. This is really so that we can ensure that we have a good flow to the conversation today, but we'll always give priority to any of your questions. So as she mentioned, use the raise hand function, or if you'd prefer to ask on the chat or the Q&A box, I can ask on your behalf as well. But we love to keep this conversational, informal. You know, you're all here to learn something. I'm also of the opinion that everyone in the room has great insight themselves and their own lived experience. So if you feel you have anything you can add to the conversation as well, we absolutely welcome that. And to the point of the impending tariffs, it is leaving a lot of entrepreneurs unsure about the immediate future. You know, what does the next month look like, or the next 3 months look like for you and your business? And so while myself and our speakers and the rest of the Startup Canada team will do our best to answer your questions and provide advice, we may not have all the answers. As you're aware, things are just changing constantly. So we will absolutely do our best. But rest assured, the Startup Canada team is working constantly in the background to bring you updated information, resources like our tariff toolkit. So we'll have more content to come in the coming weeks as well. So just wanted to let anyone know that if that is on top of your mind. So the questions we have, we've designed these to sort of be like thought starters for our attendees as well. So we'll kind of open up the conversation to various different topics that you might be experiencing in challenges in your business. And I think a great one to open up the conversation to, and I'll pose this question to each of our speakers. The single most important advice that you'd give to someone who is just starting out within the CPG space. Angie, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so for me personally is to let go for the need of perfection. So early on, our biggest mistake that we learned was that we spent way too much time on making everything perfect. So like our website, our packaging design, the colors, the product itself. But then we quickly learned after launch that what you think is perfect or will work isn't always going to resonate with your audience. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we're actually primarily D2C as well. So that's our biggest channel. So we were able to collect a lot of data. And plus, that's why we'll talk about this later on too, about building community. So we do a lot of surveys and like do a lot of polls on social media to get people's feedback. So from there, yeah, and it's what we thought was like going to be the thing was not the thing. So we actually pivot and iterate quite a bit since launch. So that's our biggest learning experience. I wish I knew.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Like letting well, you know, obviously everyone comes up with like who their ideal customer and you do your research as best you can and who you think they are. But then once you launch, you're going to find out new things from your customers or customers maybe you didn't expect to have. And I love that you helped that drive your direction of growth. Kat, how about yourself? That one piece of advice.
Yeah, one piece of advice that I heard early on was progress is progress, no matter how small. So like Ali, I was building Lawn working full time. And so with my co-founder. So for 2 years, we were working full time and just working on Lawn in the evenings or on weekends, going to markets, selling our products in person. And some days I would get 15 minutes of work done, and some days I'd get 2 hours of work done. And those days where I only did 15 minutes, I felt I was beating myself up because I was like, oh man, I could be doing so much more, but it didn't matter because now, all that work led to a place where we are now in the business full time. And it's really hard to get caught up on like what everyone else is doing and how much work you should be putting in. But just know that even if you're putting 5 minutes in a day while you're working full time towards your goals and towards your dream company, that still is progress, and you should pat yourself on the back for that.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Cam. And Susie.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I'm a late bloomer because I started my first entrepreneur career and launch at age 50. However, my specialty has been brand building and CPG brand building. CPG has been become much, much tougher in the last 5 years than the previous 5 years. And then the previous 30 years were also very tough. And that's why there's a whole industry where, you know, your full-time career is brand manager, brand director, VP of marketing, etc. Like it's hard, like it's war out there with the other CPG brands. And then we have us little founders that have an idea and want to kind of go up against the big guys and play in this big battlefield that you know, people like me have spent 20, 30 years in. So the advice I would give is I have the Susie's 4P method. I start everything with positioning, but then you have product pricing and P&L. And I do recommend for all the founders that have worked with me, like to focus on the positioning first and foremost. If you have a product truth, great. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't be launching. Pricing, you just have to have the right pricing for your product and positioning, and then the P&L just flows out of that. But the more time you spend on the first 3 Ps, the better, because the 4th P is about spending money. Raising money, spending money, raising money, spending money. The first 3 is about giving you the foundation. You know, will your brand be like Love Good Fats sold 100 million in 3 years? Or will it be, you know, a million over 10 years, right? Like, but that starts with your first 3 Ps. There's a method, and now with TikTok and with, you know, there's a bunch of tools. They haven't really changed. So the tools I use with all my clients, all my coaching is the same, the brand positioning and the 4 Ps, but really it's free. You know, it's nearly free to sweat your positioning, nearly free. Once you're on the shelf and your products aren't turning as fast as they should, it gets real expensive real quickly. So I used to say, you know, just start, because I procrastinated. It took me 2 years to start at age 50. And now I've changed that to like, do a little bit more homework on 3 of the 4 Ps before you start spending money and finding out that you may hit a ceiling and then you have to relaunch, and that's really expensive.
Excellent pieces of advice. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think especially in the CPG space, no matter what sort of subsector of that you're in, you will most likely find that you are, you know, it's a saturated market in that sense. So, you know, you've taking that time to really identify what your brand is and what your differentiation is to everyone else and help you stand out, I think will suit you so much better in the long run. I know we had someone in the and Mina has just asked you a question, Susie, in the chat, if you'd like to discuss what the 3 Ps are, or if that's something you keep confidential for.
Yeah. So, and my website will be out soon, so I'll be literally dropping my tools for free. And you could just pull them up. But the 4 Ps is positioning is first and foremost. Positioning. And that's, you know, I don't know if the call's being recorded, I'll put it in the comments, but target group, insight, which is your accepted consumer belief, your AHA, like benefit of your product. So insight, I set up the need for the product, boom, AHA. Then I introduce my brand as the brand that benefit to the consumer. Remembering that the consumer is selfish. We are selfish. Consumers are selfish. What's in it for me with it? So the benefit is not an attribute. It's a benefit to the consumer. Then the reason to believe, like usually there's a few. So why would we believe that you claim to have this benefit for me, the selfish consumer? And then your pricing strategy, are you premium, discount, or parity, and versus whom? That fits on 1 page in Word. I still have mine from 30 years ago at P&G, and I launched Tostitos into Canada. I relaunched Doritos because it was declining, if you can imagine that. Heinz Ketchup was declining for 10 years. Weight Watchers was declining for 10 years. Always the same. Start with positioning. And the positioning statement, I'm just working with a great agency now, my client, same thing. On 1 page, whether you put it in a row on Word or in boxes, same thing. Just write down those. And I do have the format that I can just drop to everyone. So that's positioning. And then the other 3 Ps are really flow out of it, your product. You have to have a product truth. Your positioning should come from your product truth. So what is kind of special about your product? And if you don't have a really big compelling product truth, therefore you're not meeting an unmet need from your insight, then it's gonna not hold together. Pricing is your price value equation, so you can be premium, parity, or discount, and then P&L is your fourth P. You can get into the other 10 Ps and place and promotion and all that, and you can leave that for the marketers. But those 4 Ps are pretty much like 90% of your business plan is on that first page of the 4 Ps, and that's where you want to sweat that. There's a way to validate the positioning. It's called concept testing. So I've done, a dozen of workshops on concept testing, and I'm currently using Amazon concept testing now because it's $100 instead of $2,000 to test the same thing that we've been testing, Nielsen, Bases, Ipsos. You can now test your concept, your brand concept on Amazon with Intelligy for $100 instead of what used to cost us. Well, back when I started, 30,000, now about 2, but you can actually just throw it on Amazon. And if it's successful on Amazon, it'll be successful in retail. If it's successful in retail, it'll be successful on Amazon. That's pretty much now the proven golden rule. There's perhaps a few exceptions, but reality is, if you want to know if your brand will do well, put it on Amazon, do a little bit of spend. If it's not doing well, don't go put it at a Healthy Planet or Canadian Tire, because if it doesn't do well on Amazon, it most likely will not do well in stores, even with displays and, front of the cash and all that stuff. So a lot of that stuff's been kind of learned, and I'll drop the links to these tools, and then my website will have a lot of free content too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susie. There's a few questions in the chat. If you wouldn't mind getting back to them in the chat.
Okay.
Follow up from what you've talked about. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we had someone at the beginning talking, or rather asking about pricing and pricing strategy. And Angie, I wanted to ask you, and you talked a lot about like pivoting in the last few years, but can you share your experience or maybe your process of determining your initial pricing strategy, and then how you've adjusted it as you've grown?
Sure. I just want to start by saying I love that tip, Susie, about the Amazon concept testing, because we just launched a product last week on Amazon to test, but we didn't know about Intelligy. So I'm definitely going to look into that.
Okay, I'll drop the link.
Yes, please. But yes, going back to the 4 Ps, I truly believe that positioning is very, very important. So what we did when we had our product, we knew that we were different, but our customers didn't. But we start analyzing our competitors in our category, which is laundry detergent, more specifically detergent sheet, which is a new format. So we decided to position ourselves to be more premium, and I'll talk about that, like why. Because we source like better ingredients, we reformulated our entire formulation, and we actually added luxurious scents to it, which is like a white space in the market that we noticed as well. So as you know, a lot of, 90% of your detergent on the market right now is by big companies, and they're in plastic jugs. They have a long list of chemicals that most of them are pretty harsh for your skin. So we want to kind of fix all that, which is a pain point that we noticed from our customer. So that really helped us when we differentiate ourselves and position ourselves to be more premium. We were able to increase our price. So a couple of years ago, when our market became saturated on specifically Amazon is one of our biggest channel, everyone started racing to the bottom with pricing. So everyone's competing with pricing. They're just cutting their pricing down. And that's how you get more volume. But more volume doesn't necessarily mean better profit. So what we did with our subset is that we actually increased our price as a test. And it's really interesting, but we actually didn't impact our volume. If anything, it increased a bit. So that's like a testament to just having very strong branding, positioning, and storytelling as well. So we held to that. And that actually helped us in the long run because, everything became more expensive with freight, shipping costs, raw materials, etc. So because we're able to continue to hold that positioning and that margin, we were able to be a bit more sustainable. And then we realized some of the brands, not the big companies because they have unlimited budgets, they start to drop off So they stopped selling, and I think it's because they weren't able to hit their margins, even though early on they were doing extremely high revenue. So that's kind of our experience. We are still testing with pricing as well. We dropped our price for one product that we launched, and still getting feedback, but it's never going to be like perfect. So it's okay to change your price, but we realize it's better to price high and then slowly drop it than price low and then increase it as well too. Because like if they buy at a low price, they'll never come back to buy at a higher price. So that's our learning experience.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Kat, the same to you, like figuring out that pricing strategy. And I know with like I will say that I'm a consumer of all three of our speakers' products. I buy them on the regular, so I'm definitely a loyal customer to them all. But Kat, you know, with candles, there is such an array of price points that folks can go to, and so for you and your co-founder, like what was that process like in positioning yourself where you are, and maybe that goes into like your brand as well, and retaining your loyal customers.
Yeah, well, to be completely honest, we had no strategy at the beginning. We benchmarked ourselves against one other brand that we saw as our competitor in the stores we wanted to be in, and we sold our candle for $45, and we sold them at markets. People didn't really bat an eye. And then we got feedback from a lot of our retailers. A lot of our stores are independent retailers that our price point was too high. So we actually ended up lowering it slightly to, I think, 42, just for the core size, which is 7.5 ounce. But since then, you know, now the price is 48 because of inflation. It's affected us all. And I guess unlike Angie, we've had to steadily increase, you know, I think we've done a price increase every other year for the last 4 or 5 years. And we strategically price our US candles higher, just so we have that extra margin. Sorry, not higher than our Canadian pricing, but with the conversion, we're making more money on our US product. Given the tariffs, that strategy will obviously have to change, and we're gonna be figuring that out. But now, you know, in reference to the P's, which is really important, I'm always looking at profit. So because the majority of our revenue comes from wholesale, our retailers buy our product at 50% of the retail value. So I'm constantly just ensuring that we have enough margin in our wholesale products to be able to afford to continue to run the business. And I'm constantly looking at our numbers, especially now, you know, our raw materials have increased in price, our packaging has increased, the US dollar, we get so much of our materials from the US. So it's been absolutely crazy lately. So we just did a price increase actually on January 1st in Canada and the US, and now we're going to have to increase our US prices again. And it's always a scary thing because Victoria and I, my co-founder, always take the feedback to heart from our retailers or our customers if they're telling us our product's too expensive, but we've never, you know, in the last year or two had anyone complain. And I think we've kind of gotten over that fear because, you know what, at the end of the day, you're running a business. You need to support yourself. You need to support your team. You need to pay your bills. And if you can't do that, then you don't have a business. So we've just been a lot quicker with making decisions and increasing our prices, and just being really transparent to our community about that. Because, you know, when's the last time you know, looked at Lululemon or whatever, wherever you buy your favorite pair of jeans or your t-shirt and thought, oh, they raised their price by $2 or $4. No one ever notices these types of things. So yeah, it's been an ongoing, I guess, process, but I would say at the end of the day, profit is everything.
That's fantastic, Kat. And yeah, you're so right in the just taking that leap and increasing prices if needed, and the transparency. And I think small businesses do that so well because they've created such a wonderful community with their business. And you know, with all of this tariff talk as well, there's so much conversation around, you know, supporting Canadian businesses and buying made in Canada and all of that, which is wonderful. But having that transparency and trusting your community as well, that they'll back you and understand sort of where you're coming from. And you know, trying not to or trying to compete with these larger brands that maybe can afford to not have to incrementally do all those increases. I wanted to touch on you've each talked about where you're selling, and you're doing a lot of wholesale to retail. So can you Kat and Susie, could you maybe each share advice on how you're approaching and managing these retail partnerships? Like, how are you starting these conversations? What's that process like then from those initial conversations to getting your product on the shelves, and what it actually means to commit to being on the shelves of these different retailers? Susie, maybe I can go to you first with this.
Yeah. From a small startup perspective, what a lot of people have done and have exited with and are still doing is to start, with 100 stores in a close proximity to your home. That's been the advice for 10 years, and it continues to be really, really good advice, because then you can, first you can walk into the store for many of them, or you can get small local tests, even Sobeys local, and then you can get some data, because ideally you do your 3 of your 4 Ps like on your laptop, in your office, not in the stores, because changing price and changing positioning is expensive. Changing ads and campaigns, and social content, that's not very expensive, but changing the basics of taking my price up and down can be more expensive. But if you're in smaller stores, then you have like these small store owners, Natural Specialty, they're just all incredible. As soon as you want to go beyond 100 stores or 20 stores, the culprits in Canada are pretty much all the same, and it's the same in the US. You have your natural stores. If you have an idea that appeals to like more than a natural store, you're like a tool that really is just Home Depot or Canadian Tire, then you kind of have to make that step from small to like chains. And all the industries in retail operate in a similar way. There's the entry level. So in Canada, we're very lucky. We have about 20 chains, from Healthy Planet and Goodness Me. And you want to get into those chains, and that can be, you can get a lot of volume from just being in the natural chains. The problem with getting into those chains is they want a distributor. Signing up with a distributor costs money, and the cost to fail is pretty high at a distributor, and the cost to win is pretty high. You have to assume that if you sell for $40,000-$50,000 year one at one of the distributors, you're only going to have half of that in your bank account. Half of your selling revenue will come back to you. The other half is eaten away with free fills and mini listing fees, and we need an ad to do this, and we need a promo schedule, and we need markdowns, blah, blah, blah. So as soon as you go into the stores and you go through a distributor, because unless you're driving around yourself, but they don't even want to take that, the cost to play gets pretty expensive. If it doesn't sell, it's even worse, because then you have to do markdowns. So the P&L is really key, that was discussed earlier. You have to price it knowing that the distributor pricing is the lowest in the country. So if you sell at, Loblaws for $10, distributor you sell for $7, Costco you sell for $9. Right? And Walmart you sell for $9 also, a little bit less than Loblaws, but they get more promotions. So you have to price everything right, but your distributors are the lowest price. And then you have to price Amazon right versus those guys, because if you piss one of them off and you have a popular brand, you'll lose everything. Everyone will call you and scream at you that, you're 20 cents off at this banner versus that banner. So start small, try to get proof of concept, either Amazon or the 100 stores around you, or Shopify if there's problems with Amazon. I have a chocolate, so I can't do Amazon in the summer. And then you have to learn what the market is to go bigger, but that's when the stakes go up and the risk goes up and the cost goes up. So you want to validate your proof of concept before you venture out too much.
Thank you, Susie. And before I get to Kat, I know someone in the chat had asked about advice around products with a shelf life. And I know that you gave an answer, but in case anyone else didn't, I think it would be great. We do have quite a few food businesses here for selling on, Amazon or even selling in retail.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. I mean, I'm working with someone now. She had a yogurt base. We have another founder who was making fresh salads, and he built a whole warehouse in Toronto. Oh my goodness, like if you think it's hard, like my products have 2 and 3 years shelf life. If you think it's on vitamins or longer, it's really, really hard. So it forces you to start smaller, which is often why some of these products will start at restaurants and will start in communities, and they build up a following. And then when you're ready to go bigger, you really have to kind of tap into the best practices off, like when you kind of want to take a step and you're doing a yogurt, or I think I know the greenhouse guys, like when they first launched, they had 7 days. Greenhouse is 7 days. So you work in parallel, like how do I extend my 7 days to 3 months, and then you still need high turnover. You need to have the right distributors, and you need to be able to forecast. Don't do too many SKUs, because that's harder to forecast. You'll have a lot of stales, right? It's not an easy industry to be in, but if you have like a better fresh product, I think there's 2 phenomenal Canadian brands, Nuts for Cheese and Spread'em, which has now been rebranded to Millsy. Those 2 women, Margaret and Millsy founder Melissa, they've managed to do it, and they both started from their kitchen table, and both of their brands now are nearly 10 years old and in the millions and millions of sales. So it's doable, but it's not for the faint of heart. You have to kind of do a little bit, see how it's going, do a little bit, see how it's going.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Susie. And thank you for your honesty as well, and being candid about that, because it's easy to say, yeah, just try it out and see how it goes. But you really need to be strategic about it when you're coming from that place of having a shelf life. And so hopefully that helps with no one making those mistakes. Kat, how about yourself, navigating those retail relationships?
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite parts of building a business. Since day one, we were sampling our products, dropping them off at our favorite stores. And to Susie's point, the top 100 doors are probably in the GTA, to be honest, even though we're across North America and in certain Caribbean countries. But we really built the business through relationships. So places we shopped at previously, or buyers who were connected with other founders that we know. The reason why we got into Holt Renfrew was through a connection. And unfortunately, that's just the way the world works most of the time. Luckily, we have a great product and it does sell through. But I am very, very, very focused on maintaining these relationships, having regular phone calls and meetings with these top buyers for our top, 10 to 15 doors. We have monthly or quarterly touch bases so that they remember us, and we can tell them what's coming up, what's new, how we can support them. We are very involved with training the sales staff, because at the end of the day, the people on the floor, if they don't love your brand, they're not going to sell it for you. So with Holt Renfrew, last Friday, I went in, I met with 20 of the sales reps at the Bloor Street location, trained all of them on the brand, gave them all free product. We make sure to allocate a certain amount of marketing spend to these retailers so that they can fall in love with lawn and they can sell it. We do a lot of, the marketing initiatives, for example, with Detox Market. We were part of their detox box last fall. So we launched a candle in one of their gift boxes at a lower margin, but that got our product into 1,000 customers in the US into their hands. So really allocating, again, back to the P&L, allocating a certain percentage to building these relationships, especially in the top retailers. What we've noticed is that we're not in many large retailers. We were in Anthropologie with our holiday collection last year. We've never been in, Nordstrom or any of these big retailers. We've Holt Renfrew, Detox Market, Well.ca, those are our biggest ones. And they've been the most reliable, these independents and these smaller stores. It can be so scary when you rely on these majors whether it's Anthropologie or a Sobeys or a Whole Foods, if they give you, $500,000 purchase order and then they cut you a couple years after or a year after because your product's not selling. So it's really important to invest your time into these relationships, meet the sales staff, do demos, go into the stores. If you can't do it as the founder, hire someone to do it, because you have to sell through the product in order for them to continue carrying your product. There have been also times where I walk into Indigo, we're in Indigo as well, and only in 10 doors. But I go in and I buy product that maybe is a little dusty or doesn't look good, or I just buy, 3 or 4 candles to show that they're selling. Like you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. And just making sure you prioritize these relationships, because just because you're in a store doesn't mean you're going to stay in. So you really have to devote that time, that energy, and in some cases that those funds towards building those relationships.
I love that you talked about, yes, you have a few like large retailers selling your products, but a lot of these are these smaller stores. And that's how I came to know your brand, was from a vintage store in Vancouver. And I feel like the people that those smaller independent stores are attracting are people that want to be supporting smaller businesses, and they're getting that repeat customer coming through again and again. So I feel like it's a fantastic way to get your brand out to these already loyal customer bases, I guess, that you're kind of getting to infiltrate through other small businesses supporting you. I know we've heard a lot from me and my questions, so I do want to take a pause to see, are there any questions from our attendees you'd like to come on camera and microphone to ask your question? I want to ensure we have about 25 minutes or so left of the panel discussion session. So if there are any questions, Christina, please, yes.
Hi, just to parlay that what Kat was saying, if you do have to work through a distributor with certain vendors, how do you have any tips of the trade to deepen those relationships directly, given that you have to kind of work through distributors?
I can speak to this really quickly. I know it's different for food. I will be completely honest. We've worked with over 6 or 7 different sales agencies, which in our world of home fragrance and lifestyle and clothing and accessories, it's called a sales agency, where they take a 15% commission. That seems to be the standard rate. We worked with a couple agencies in Canada and then a few in the US. It never worked for us because we simply lost touch with those buyers, and we weren't the ones selling the brand, and we would give, strict kind of sales targets, and they weren't able to meet them. And now that we took it back in house and we have that margin back on our plates, it's better for us. I know it's different depending on the industry and depending on the product you're selling. For food, of course, it seems to be food and bev. It seems to be quite necessary to have a distributor. But at the end of the day, if you are a beauty brand or home fragrance brand and you are trying out a distributor or a sales agency, I would just say to make sure that you are still in touch with the stores, and you have to put in that extra effort, even though you're paying someone that commission to sell on your behalf. Make sure to have those meetings, have those sales trainings, be present, go visit the stores, visit the buyers, to maintain those relationships.
Yeah, and I would echo the same, like it's mandatory for the founder to attend the meetings. And, brokers, like especially in the US, I don't know anybody who says I love my broker. Like, oh my goodness, and you're bouncing around from one broker to another, especially in the US. Canada's a little bit better in food and CPG. There's consolidated, there's a few big ones. I just brought on LeBeau for me. I've worked with him for 12 years and I have 3 product categories, and but I'm still going to be at every single meeting, and that is really, really key. So it is really, really hard. And then there's brokers that are like, oh, it's just $1,000 retainer. And then 3 months later, you're changing broker because, they get their retainer, but your products aren't getting listed. You're not getting the invites. It's really, really tough. You have to be at the meetings. If you can't get a meeting and you have a really good product, start making noise on social media, and don't forget Costco. You know, most of the products that I've seen here could do well at Costco, and you just need a little bit of noise on social media, and Costco will take a meeting. You know, like it's really easy to get samples in both their offices, and we all know that Costco's made more millionaires than any other retailer anywhere in the world by supporting startup brands. So, you know, they don't like you having a broker because they want that 2% in their in the consumer's hands by lowering the price. So just be scrappy, don't take no for an answer. Try to do it as long as you can without a broker. When you're getting quite big, then everyone's going to want to be your broker. But even then, be really, really, really selfish about, like, I'm at my meetings, I'm managing the accounts, because you know your business more than anybody. And the brokers have, you know, 30 to 70 brands, and they, you know, there's balls dropped everywhere. It's just kind of how it works.
Thank you, Susie. Angie, I see you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I want to quickly add to that, like our experience too. So even though we're not food and it's our smallest channel, we did in Canada bounce around to different brokers. So I'm happy to know that that's like common. And we have different distributors, but we still decide to work with distributors and brokers because we needed that help. It's not our strength. So we actually signed on with Unify. That's our distributor. They're actually very organized. I mean, we just started working with them, but their team has been great. And we have a great broker in between. So they brought us to this thing called the Innovation Show, where if you work with a distributor in the future, is they bring up all the buyers. And thank God in the beginning, I personally met the buyers myself, because similar to Kat, we go to like every single store, like in the beginning, to like beg them to like try a product, or like even on consignment. So they recognize your face, and we built that relationship. So at the show, it's like, oh yeah, I remember you 2 years or 3 years ago. What else do you have? What's new? And it just made it so much easier. So that's really good advice, to have that relationship. And I'm going to take Susie's advice too. In the future, I should be in all the calls with the broker, distributor, and the buyer, because you're right. Like I find that I always have to continue to follow up with the broker, even though they're great. It's because they have so many, you know, brands that they're managing. So you always have to be on top of them as well. Like no one's going to sell your brand, your product better than you will. So yeah, that's really good advice too.
Thank you, Angie. I see Anu, you have your hand up if you'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful that I joined today. Sorry, I just had a laser on my face, so my face is all swollen, so I cannot share my video. Yeah, my company is Blue Notch Probiotics. Susie, I just sent you a message in LinkedIn. I'm developing a probiotic beverage which is plant-based and is sugar-free. The idea came from a colloquial drink which is called lassi, which is a very popular beverage in India. And it's made out of milk and has tons of sugar in it. And there is only one kind of bacteria. So with my probiotic, I really tried to challenge the norm of a traditional beverage, making it super healthy. Yeah, I was the one, Susie, asking about Amazon. You know, it's very confusing, like where do I go? Like you said, dairy, yogurt-based products do not have long shelf life. Right now, I have like 7 to 8 months of shelf life, which is not a lot, right? And I'm struggling to figure out what would be my best way to launch this product in summer, other than farmers market and small, I would say, food fairs. Like you were talking about positioning, you know, whether to position it as a premium drink because the ingredients are premium. Like it's a constant struggle, keeping in mind affordability as well. Yeah, Cultured Coconut, that's my friend's company. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted too, Susie.
Yeah, just talk to Linda. I just bought a case of hers, so hopefully they last long enough. She's great. Talk to her. She's figured it all out. She's figured out the shipping. She's figured out everything. She started really small, and her product's amazing. But connect with other founders that own small lifetime, and you'll get all of the tricks. But it is harder. You have to handhold it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anu. Mel, you have a question.
Hi, I'm Mel, Moonshine Mamas on Salt Spring Island, BC. We've been making turmeric-based elixirs for the last, well, it's been 11 years now, actually. I'm just echoing what Susie mentioned about, I really appreciate all that, even 11 years in, and I'm finding that I'm still making small enough mistakes that hopefully I can recover from, but the working with distributors is relatively new for me. We grew organically and with self-distribution throughout BC and Ontario until about 2 years ago. Well, just after COVID, we started working with distributors, and that's been a real learning curve for sure, getting those numbers. Like Susie was saying, I did not nail it. I had no idea how to manage the MCBs, working with the broker and getting all those constant barrage of emails of promo proposals. And we, even though we did set a budget with our broker for trade spend, we ended up spending about 3 times what we were meant to, and it almost killed us. And so I cannot go back in time. I wish I did, and I worked with somebody to help me to establish those numbers, but I have struggled with that literally through working with even working with consultants and all kinds of things. I'm close now because of another a group that I'm with, and I got a whole different, I built my own template for trying to figure out the numbers, and I now have another one from somebody, and it's working much better, and I have a much clearer picture. But still, I cannot emphasize more to know those numbers when you're venturing into working with brokers and distributors, because I'm lucky that I'm able to recover from this, but it could have stopped us in our tracks. So my question is, and it's specifically Susie, do you know of a good resource for getting those numbers really nailed in?
No, I was gonna say I did so the first year of Founders, I was doing master classes every month, and the pricing, what I was gonna jump in and say is the pricing channel strategy is super key. I helped a small brand in Quebec recently. It was just 20 hours, and they're bigger than a lot of startup small brands, but they're still, below $1 million. They're a Quebec brand of lattes. And, between the beginning of the assignment where it's like, oh, like, look at our margin and look at our pricing, but they were in, select direct stores where they were selling at a price that once you go to distributor, they went from making 50 to 10 gross margin. Right.
Yeah.
And at first it was like, oh, the buyer of whatever, I'll make it up, Healthy Planet, blah, blah, blah. We're ready to go. We're ready to grow outside of Quebec. And oh my goodness, no, because if you're only selling, you're small and you're selling direct and you're getting favors with Sobeys local, whatnot, you have to do your pricing strategy. And it comes back to the channel. So I'll find my model that I shared, distributor, direct mass, direct Costco, direct food, like those 4, and then Amazon and Shopify, which is the same. I have a P&L, those 5 channels, and it starts with the list price all the way down to your gross margin and then all the way down to your contribution margin. You have to know that before, because you are going to get year 1 all of these MCBs and markdowns, and you're not going to make money even if, Purity sells 200,000, you're only going to have 100 in your bank account. And it's okay if you have cash flow to pay for that 100 somewhere else. But if you need that 100 to pay your bills, you're pooched. So there's science to it. Most of the brokers, this is not their area of expertise. They're just like, tell me your price. I'm going to run to the store, to the retailer, and I'll get you listed. And then you're chasing them. Well, wait, what? And then they're getting you to approve an email. Okay, I gotta approve all this, and you don't even know that, you know, the promos is a percentage of wholesale, not a percentage of list, so it's a way bigger number. And then all of the stores pre-buy, so it's an even bigger number. Oh my God, it's all stacked against us. Everyone's getting a discount except we don't get the money to pay the bills. So if you're not familiar with the pricing strategies and profit unit economics by channel, you have to have that chart before you start approaching brokers and going to channels, and you have to check it. You know, I only spent 20 hours with those guys, and we did everything, business review, innovation. And then it was like, whoa, like cost structure doesn't work. Change your formulas before you expand outside of Quebec. Like, it's not going to work. Like, change your servings, change your formulas, right? Like, pause, or you're just going to face plan.
Yeah. And one other thing that I would like to mention too is with dealing with distributors is when you get those MCBs, scrutinize them and don't be afraid to reach out to those distributors and fight back. We clawed back, like just this year, probably $30,000 in MCBs. So just really be scrappy that way too.
Congrats.
Thanks.
That's major.
Yeah.
That's hard. It's really hard.
It is really hard. We just
say
stay
no.
on them.
Yeah.
We're relentless. We're still pretty small. We're bootstrapped, and every dollar counts in keeping us going. So
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mel. Ali, I know you have your hand up, but I have a message from Kim saying that she'd like to chime in on this specific topic. So Kim, if you'd like
Awesome. Thank you so much, Isabel. So yeah, I've worked in consumer packaged goods, as I said at the beginning. I've worked for McCormick Canada, Clubhouse Foods, and I've been helping entrepreneurs in a few ways. And one thing that came up, I'm not sure if a number of you are familiar with Utterly Ridiculous Ice Cream. She is a go-getter who basically, she and her husband have a goat farm, and they wanted to basically productize and create their own variety of ice creams. So they got listed at Sobeys, and one of the challenges for her was that she basically betted the farm on the product. Her products are amazing, but the challenge for her was that she got locked into things that almost crippled her business, like overbuying on cartons. She didn't need so many printed cartons. And so some of the requirements to be on shelf at Sobeys, I just want to say that, you know, it's awesome to get on shelf at Sobeys. We all love Sobeys. But it can also really affect your business, and it can affect what Susie was saying with your P&L. So getting on shelf at Sobeys is a great accomplishment, but staying on shelf at Sobeys is just as difficult. So, you know, what I encourage you to do is to think about, is the big box stores, are they your best option? In the case of Cheryl Haskett with Utterly Ridiculous, she actually pivoted, so she's on shelf now. She kind of pivoted away from the Sobeys demands of trade and moved into more of the independents. And so she's been gaining traction. She also looked at how she could create an experience for people when they come, basically created a market on the farm and created an experience on the farm. So I just want to throw that out there to all of you entrepreneurial women, just to think, what can you do outside of the box? Because unfortunately, CPG isn't friendly for entrepreneurs with small budgets. That's just the reality. But it's an opportunity for what we call in marketing, guerrilla marketing, and being creative and thinking outside of the box. So yeah, I think it can really hurt your business and almost bankrupt you if you get locked into some of these trade terms that are really meant and designed for the bigger brands, bigger budgets. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought starter for you to think outside of the box. And, you know, there are other ways to get, obviously if you're locked in for sure, but before you lock in, there might be other ways to get creative. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Some great nuggets there. Ali, I will pass to you. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. I just have a super quick question. I would love to hear some examples of like positive sell-through rates for stores. Does anyone have any examples?
Yeah, Angie, Kat.
Yeah, well, I have insane sell-through rates because when I launched Love Good Fats, we smashed like 30-year records. Like the numbers were insane. So within 6 months of being at Whole Food Canada on 4 SKUs, we were selling an average in Canada of $2,400 per whole food per week. 2,400. Some of them were selling 4,600. Costco, we were selling $9,000 per warehouse per week. When we did the promo, you know, whatever, $4 off or whatever it was, we were sold 28,000 and 4 Costco's and an average of not 7,000 or something. The turn rates were so incredible that the US VCs, and I met 60 of them because everyone was throwing money at us, they didn't believe me. You know, they didn't believe because there's no one single brand in Whole Foods US that's selling $2,000 for 4 SKUs, like none, zero. Certainly not in bars. I think the best bar was like $800 or something for 4 SKUs. So you can get like really, really strong velocities. If you look at Canadian brands right now that are doing well, you know, Flourish, like there's a whole bunch. Start with like a lot of the Canadian brands, you'll have a look at them at Costco sooner versus later. But the rule of thumb is so there can be like incredible success stories. But the rule of thumb is that your buyer will tell you what they're looking for. And it's anywhere from, in bars, it still is, you know, 6 bars per store per week on average, but a bar is like $3. So that's $18. If you're selling a $20 candle, your target might be 2 per month, right? Like on average, every category, the buyer has targets. And what's important is that you're above average. So if you're in a store and they sell on average, you know, $40 worth, like the top 5 best-selling brands are selling 40 and the dogs that are going to get discontinued are selling 10, you want to be closer to 30. So it really, really varies. Every meeting that you're in, don't leave the meeting without asking, what is success? What are my velocities? What do my velocities need to be? Every single meeting, make a note, put a sticker, put something on your forehead. What is the target velocities? Again, I presented to, I don't know, 80 accounts. I flew all over the US, all over Canada, just with my startup. You ask every single meeting, you're there with the buyer. What's success? What is the velocities? So then you know. And then you can do math, you know, what I did, which a lot of founders do, is I went to 3 Whole Foods near my house. One of them was the Leaside one. So I was going every 2 days and I was asking the store manager if he took stock from the back. So I was counting the bars like on the shelf. And I did that for 10 weeks. Lo and behold, you know, at week 6 at Whole Foods downtown, we were the number 1 and 2 selling bars of the whole store. And the store manager ran to come see me. Like, I didn't know, right? But like, you have to figure it out. Like, how much am I selling per week per store? You have to know that, and you have to know if that's good or not. Like, that's your job as the founder to know that, because that's velocities. And that's the single most important thing. Like, it's more important than distribution. Velocities.
Thank you, Susie. Angie, I know I saw you unmuted yourself for that as well. I'd love to give you time to add anything to that.
Yeah, we're on a much smaller scale, but we are in a lot of independents like Fiesta Farms and Big Carrot. The laundry category is different, but Ali, we do have pretty decent sell-through with the smaller independents. So I think a lot of it has to do with us doing a lot of demos from the store. Kind of like Kat said, visiting the buyers or the store owners and doing a lot of education and like giving them a lot of samples to give out to their community around them. So I think that's how we were able to have an okay or decent sell-through in our category in independent stores.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'll definitely make sure I'm tracking that. It's kind of just nice to have like a benchmark, or like, because I work with really small local stores and I don't know that they have like their targets set up, but some of my products are selling really fast. But I just am curious to know, like, what's fast in the real world, I live in a very small town. So Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Some fantastic questions from our attendees, I should say. It is always wonderful to hear from you and hear your perspectives and where exactly you're looking for direction and advice. It really also helps us inform all the other sessions that we do. So thank you so much for raising your hands and asking your questions. That is time for our panel discussion. Mel, I see you have your hand up. I'm so sorry, but we are going to go into our networking breakout rooms. So you'll have plenty of time to ask your questions. We will be putting our speakers into these rooms.